The last time Mill took on Sheffield United, Japhet Tanganga was on the verge of a move up north. Ruben Sellers was a dead man walking. Stephen Bender, if you can remember him, won man of the match. And Luke Cundall's instinctive first half strike meant the Lions did the double over the Blades in 2025, both at Bramall Lane, both 1-0. Yeah, both 1-0. That two of the four names I mentioned above are not at their respective clubs anymore, shows how much has changed since then. That performance felt like the Millwall of last season, gritty, determined, but not quite capable of going toe-to-toe with the best of the Championship. In the past few weeks, they have shown they can. Hopefully that growth will be obvious on Saturday. Hello and welcome to the News at 10 Millwall podcast. I'm William Scott and I'm joined by Danny Hall from the Sheffield Star, who's going to give us the perspective ahead of this weekend's match. How are you doing, Danny?
I'm good, thank you, Will. How are you?
Excellent. How are you feeling? You excited for a trip down to the Den?
I'm looking forward to it. It's one of the... I don't think many people enjoy coming to the Den. And I mean that in a positive way because, you know, Millwall fans and Millwall players make it a really difficult place to visit, don't they? I mean that with the greatest of respect. But I always enjoy it, you know, the whole... It's just a proper place to play football, isn't it? You know, even down to the song, the pre-match "Let 'Em Come" is one of the best football songs going, I think. And, you know, the Millwall fans always get behind their team and make it a really intimidating place to come. And there's always been some pretty eventful games as well down there, isn't it, between Sheffield United and Millwall, you know, going back over the years. And yeah, I just really enjoy going down there. So obviously, you know, going back to May when they lost in the playoff final, that's obviously a huge blow. But I think one of the slight consolations is, you know, the fact that we'd be able to come to grounds where football is still real, you know, in the Premier League, which, you know, you guys might realise next season if it goes as it is now. Things are a lot more sanitised, things are a lot more, you know, polished and just less real, really. And, you know, Millwall, if you're looking for places where it's real, you know, that's one of them that's right up there, isn't it? So yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'd say even from the away end and from the Bermondsey station, how you're sort of filed away and one I think the editor of the sports editor of the Times, Oliver Holt, said it was like walking through something out of Jurassic Park, you know, with dinosaurs and a bit dramatic, but if you're right, it does feel a bit more real than a lot of the other likes of the bit more sleek stadiums, shall we say.
Yeah, that's all part of the appeal, isn't it? I've no doubt that's what Alex, you know, plays on as well. You know, that's part of the sort of appeal of the club, isn't it? And what makes it unique. You know, every club has something about it that makes it unique. Its own sort of, you know, unique selling point, if you can get a bit cliche about it. And that's certainly what Millwall is. And, you know, imagine, you know, football players don't enjoy playing there. But I think, you know, well, I know from Chris Wilder's previous visits to the Den, he quite enjoys it. He's someone who he knows what a proper football club is all about. That's one of his big phrases. And yeah, like I said, Millwall is definitely one of those. He got sent off there once. He says that's one of his big stories. And he had to make the long walk round at the old ground, Coldblow Lane, was it, or wherever it was?
Yeah,
Coldblow Road. And then he got a bit of stick apparently, and that's stuck with him all these years, and it's not left him. So every time we go down there now, he has a chuckle at that. I think, like I said, that just sums it up. And yeah, it's a ground that I've always had a lot of fondness for.
Yeah, definitely. And just since then, obviously, Millwall, it was a bit of a shaky start, I'd say. You know, home, their record was surprisingly poor, but away they kept on winning for some reason. But since then, they've really tightened up their home record. I think the starters have lost dropped 7 points in the last 11 home games. So they've sort of made the Den a fortress again. It seems like Sheffield United's home form has been pretty good. Alex Neil made a reference to that the other day, but away it's not been as good. How's that sort of gone since late August?
Well, yeah, you talk about shaky starts. I mean, geez. Sheffield United, you talked about the Millwall game. I'll be honest, I don't even remember that game because in that period of 7-8 at the start of the season, which they obviously lost every one, they all just sort of merged into one. It was the same performance, the same game over and over again, you know, so it was hard to differentiate between them. But the difference between now and then, excuse me, is night and day. You know, the table's not dramatically changed from a United perspective in that they haven't gone from, you know, relegation to being 6th, 7th, 8th. Although, on performances they probably should have been. I imagine when you speak to reporters up and down the country every week, they'll go, "Oh, we should be higher than we are, and we're in a false position and all that." And ultimately, the table doesn't lie, does it? Where you are in the table sort of suggests broadly where you should be. But I'm going to contradict myself slightly in that recently United should have picked up a lot more points than they have, and they just for some reason have a habit of just when things are starting to sort of go like that, and then they have a huge dip. And they just can't seem to quite get that consistency going. But as you said, they've made Bramall Lane difficult place to come. So that's something we'll mention to Chris Wilder tomorrow in how Millwall have done that with the Den. Made it a place that people don't enjoy coming to, and that's something that Chris Wilder wants to do at Bramall Lane. And they're well on the way to doing that. Apart from an FA Cup loss at home to Mansfield in the middle of that, but we'll gloss over that one. But in the league, it's become a really difficult place. But like I say, away from home, they've chucked in some bizarre displays, really. Wrexham on Boxing Day, they were 3-1 up and absolutely cruising, lost 5-3. Away at West Brom, before that, the second half was as poor as I've seen them in a long, long time, even including that early season Ruben Selles era disaster, whatever you want to call it. There was just nothing about them, and like I say, every so often they just have a habit of chucking in, whether it's a 45-minute, or a 90-minute performance or whatever, that's just not quite up to the standards. And you can see that leaves Chris Wilder absolutely tearing his hair out, because they left 7 games, they left 21 points on the table at the start of the season. They were playing catch up, almost from the minute that Chris walked back into the club, and to make that up, because the hope is still there. The table, it's not out of the realms of possibility that they still can mount a playoff push. There's plenty of time, but to do that, unfortunately, you've got to put in 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 performances on the bounce, rather than 2, 3, 4, and then chuck in a pretty average one that sets you back again. So yeah, I think that's been the sort of Achilles heel so far. It's just getting that consistency right, and that seems to have happened away from home more than it has at home for some reason. But there's been some brilliant away performances as well. They absolutely battered Leicester for 45 minutes and then held on before Christmas. Then they went to Stoke and won there really convincingly. That's again, for different reasons, but that's another tough place to go and play football, isn't it? So yeah, they've definitely shown signs of what they can do, but I think it's just sort of knitting that together for a consistent period of time. And if they can do that, they've got a game in hand, win that. I think they're 6 points off the playoffs as things stand. If they win that game in hand next week, like I said, there's plenty of football to be played. But if you're going to do that, you need to string it together. And what better place to do that than at Millwall?
What would you sort of attribute that inconsistency? I'm sure there's a lot of things going on, but it seemed again Sheffield United fell off. Obviously, had that precipitous fall at the end of last season. Is there a sort of mental fragility, or what would you put that down to?
Well, it's one of those, isn't it? If we could sort of diagnose it, then we'd be in the dugout rather than talking about it. I guess it's the $1 million question, isn't it? Honestly, I don't know. It's a frustrating habit. It really is. What I will say is that we've done this a few times, but we go back to the summer all the time. I don't know how much the rest of the championship knew about the way they went about the business, but obviously sacking Chris Wilder, bringing him back 12 weeks later, whatever it was, after selling a couple of the best players from last season, replacing them with, for the most part, being kind, average transfer business. Japhet Tanganga, of course, who you mentioned earlier, has been the best summer signing by some distance. Tyler Binden, who might play after he's been out for a couple of games, the second best, and the rest have been, like I say, average at best and pretty poor for the most part. So I think it's just been trying to turn things around gradually. I think a lot of people at this end, perhaps even Chris himself, hoped and wondered that he might come in and just turn things around. Maybe not instantly, but quicker than it sort of did take. And I think a lot of people underestimated the size of the job that he was walking back into, and how much damage had been done by that summer. I don't think people still fully understand it now. So I think that summer has essentially set the club back 18 months or so. And I think sort of turning that round has been a bigger task than a lot of people perhaps envisaged. And there's been signs of it, like I said, but then every so often they just take a step back. And yeah, whether it is, a hangover from that, it's like I say, it's the $1 million question. If I could answer that, like I said, it wouldn't be sat here now probably. But hopefully they've put that behind them. And we all know momentum's a powerful thing, isn't it? When you get it behind you and you play, you're in full flow and you're playing football, you're not thinking about anything that can go wrong. And then when there's a little chink in the armour, perhaps the memories of early season when they went under so often for certain players, maybe they come back. I don't know. And if you spoke to those players, they'd probably deny it. But that's human nature, isn't it? They are human beings at the end of the day. We like to think that they're robots who'll go out there and just do the same things again and again and again and again. But ultimately they are human beings, and perhaps that does play a little bit of a part. Like I say, hopefully they've turned the corner now with a couple of good results in the last couple. They've absolutely dominated the last game against Ipswich. We're right up there, and that was probably one of the best performances of the season. Again, they battered Leicester again at home, who we know where they are in the table, but their squad is ridiculous, and that just showed what can happen. Like I say, it's just about knitting that together, and just hopefully keeping that consistency going, as Millwall and teams like that have showed. That's why you are where you are in the table, because as Chris is one of his favourite sayings, you turn losses into draws and draws into wins, and that's ultimately what gets you promoted in this league. It's grinding results out when you're perhaps not at your best. When you are at your best, it's making it count, which is something that's really hurt United of late. They've missed so many chances. They should have won at Charlton, even when they were down to 10 men. Possibly not when they went to 9. They probably made that a little bit too difficult for themselves, getting 2 men sent off within the space of 5 minutes. And then when they went to Southampton and lost, they should have got a point at least from that. And there's so many games, you look back now, and they could generally have 8, 10, possibly 12 more points on the board, from positions where they've missed unbelievable chances, given soft goals away. And ultimately, it's all if buts and maybes, isn't it? Like I said at the start, the table is where you are. You don't, at the end of the season, you don't finish 8th and then someone goes, oh, actually, you should have beat Charlton, so we'll put you in 6th. That's not how it works. And you finish where you finish. But like I say, I think it just gives a little bit of positivity, if that's the right word, that United are on the right lines. You're not sat there scratching your head thinking, how do we sort of turn this around? It's just being more clinical, taking the big moments. And then, like I said, they've got the squad there to hopefully go on a bit of a run and maybe kickstart, their season and get up the league.
Yeah, there's one I did want to ask. It did feel very strange when Ruben Sellers came into that press conference after the match, and there was almost like a resignation. It was only 4 games into the season. Just sort of, what was that? Was that just a matter of Chris Wilder didn't get along with the model and they wanted to bring someone who would work with the model in, or what was going on there? And is there any sort of lingering sense from Chris Wilder of frustration that they did part ways with them, need to turn back to him, as he said, 12 weeks later?
Possibly privately. I think that would be completely understandable as well, because what I will say is that despite the obvious disappointment of losing at Wembley, which United have done that a lot, but it's not something that you get used to. Everything was set up there to go again. It needed slight tweaks, and Chris knew that. There was always going to be players that were going to move on. There were always players that would come in, but it needed evolution, not revolution. That's simplistic way of looking at it, but it didn't need wholesale changes. And it's easy to sit here now in the end of January and say that based on what happened, but we all said this at the time. It didn't need clearing out and starting again. There was little bits that needed fine-tuning, and ultimately I suspect the board needed sort of a fall guy, if that's the right word, or they needed someone to sort of take not the blame again, but like I said, the fall for what had happened. And that's apparently from people in and around it. That is a big thing in American culture. Obviously, the American owners came in just before Christmas last year, and have had a mixed start, let's say. They gave too much control to an advisor who, as I say, oversaw that disastrous summer. He oversaw the appointment of Ruben Sellers, oversaw some pretty bizarre AI transfers, and is now in the process of buying Sheffield Wednesday. So just to sum up the chaotic summer, that's where it is. And like I said, they just tried to change too much far too soon. And as Chris, in fair to him, there might be some sort of lingering private regret or frustration, because like I said, I've no doubt in my mind they would have been better placed in the table than they are now had they just gone again. I think that is widely accepted now. But he, first of all, credits the owners for holding their hands up and saying, listen, we got it wrong, and bringing him back. And I think that's fair, because, whether they privately admit that is one thing, but going out there and publicly admitting, listen, we got this wrong, Chris, will you come back, deserves a lot of credit. And they've gone a long way to sort of reversing the mistakes that they've made. A lot of those players, or some of those players, have now moved on. Obviously, the mastermind behind it, if you can call it that, has moved on and close to buying Sheffield Wednesday. And I think the whole club is sort of getting back on the right track a little bit. The frustration is that, like I said, they've wasted a year, 18 months by doing that, because, looking at the table at the minute, you would say promotion is unlikely. I think that's fair. I think that's reasonable looking at the table now. Parachute payments run out at the end of the year. So, they've gone from a position of strength, really, in being, the third best team in the league last season, and having so many players set up, confidence flowing through their brains. And like I said, they tried to change too much in the summer. Those players now look shadows of what they were last season. The fan base was split early season. That's sort of getting back together again a little bit, but that got fractured as well. The questions about, say, Ruben Sellers every week when he came in, like I said, he was a dead man walking for a long time. I think that's an absolutely spot on description of how it was. It just felt inevitable for a long time. Then they got battered 5-0 at Ipswich and he couldn't survive. But the writing was on the wall for a long time. They just weren't a Sheffield United team. Like I said, there's been signs of getting back to that. But unfortunately, they've wasted 7-8 games at the start of the season, and they've wasted a lot of that momentum that they built up last season. So there's a lot of question marks about that, and say hopefully, God willing, Chris can turn it around this season, because if not, in the summer we all know what happens. Parachute payment for now, big players leave, young players come in to get relied upon. It makes it harder. The wage bill drops, the transfer budget drops, and the Championship is a graveyard, really, isn't it, of former Premier League clubs who've gone, oh, we can get back up. We've got the money, we've got the squad, we've got the players, whatever. Then they don't. They have to cut the cloth. Like I said, look at Stoke, who perennially now finished 12th or 14th or whatever it is in the Championship, and it's ridiculous. Which, in fairness, is why it's quite refreshing to see. I don't mean teams like Millwall in a an arrogant way or a negative way, but who are up there having not spent mega bucks. They've done it a slightly different way in it and build, sustainably and sort of have a go. And I think that's quite refreshing to see. The summer was a shambles. United are still paying the price for that. But like I said, there's been signs so far of turning it around. And the biggest thing I can say is that this now looks like a Sheffield United team. You'll know what a Millwall team looks like. Every club knows what their team looks like at its best. And we're seeing that now with Sheffield United. And for those first 7-8 games, it wasn't.
It's funny you mentioned AI transfers. If they tried to do that here, I think Millwall Twitter would implode. I can't imagine Sheffield United fans are a big fan of it either.
It's just one of those. Will data is big. I'm pretty sure that Alex and your guys, when they sign a player, you look at the stats because that's a big part of it. The difference is that it's the tail wagging the dog, isn't it? Do you use the data to inform the decision, or does the data inform your decision? That's the difference, and that's where United went down the the wrong path. But like I said, they've sort of accepted that, admitted their expensive failures. I know if they're on the right path now. Fingers crossed.
But Tanganga, you mentioned, was sort of the one sort of standout success. Just how has he got on? I saw he sort of got sent off for that. It looked like a WWE style challenge against Charlton. I imagine that's been a successful season for him. Yeah,
it's funny. I was on the radio that day and commentating and just talking about the big thing that's impressed me with him is his calmness. Obviously, you'll remember that. He just never, apart from the early season when everything was an absolute shambles, like I say, he never looks in trouble. He never looked troubled by anything. And then about 5 minutes later, he decided to do that, which there's been a lot of debate about up here. You know, Chris Wilder was pretty vocal in the fact it wasn't a red card. It wasn't as bad as it looked. I mean, I saw it live and it didn't look great. The only replays I've seen have been really grainy footage where you can't really tell. You know, it's just it doesn't look great, is what I will say. And you know, he was a bit frustrated after the first red card. So after me singing his praises about his calmness, he was chirping at the referee, the fourth official, the linesman, everyone who would listen. And I think the ref in the end just had enough and couldn't wait to. Honestly, I don't know if you've seen the footage back, but he could not wait to get that red card out. I've never seen anything quite like it. In fact, the first red card he gave, he was that keen to show the red card. He dropped it, first of all. He couldn't even hold it properly before he gave it. So, yeah, it was just bizarre all around. And like I said, apart from that, which you say it's been a sort of blot on his copybook, hasn't it, so far? He's been brilliant. You know, it's a measure of consistency. You just roll him out there, made captain by Chris Wilder, which is a big thing. It's a big thing to be captain at any club, isn't it? You know, I'm not doing it down, but for someone like Chris Wilder, he's worn that armband, this is his football club. You know, he's grown up knowing what this football club represents and what it means to people. So he wouldn't hand that out to anyone just willy-nilly. So for him to give it to Tanganga says a lot about how he thinks of him. And yeah, he's just, like I said, on the whole, been just a really calm, measured, solid defender. You know, he's got an unbelievable leap on him, hasn't he? For someone who's not particularly, you know, he's not a small man, but he's not exactly 6'4" either. But the way that he dominates in the air is a real threat from set pieces. Like, I'm not telling you anything that you don't know because you've watched him longer than I have, but just really been really impressed with him so far, making the move to the cold and rainy north where everyone talks funny, and it's a long way from home, isn't it, for him? But he's took that really well. He's been a big part of the football club. Leads by example rather than, you know, being a big tub thumping, chest beating captain and centre half by all accounts. But you know, there's different ways, isn't there, for people to go about the business. And yeah, I think he's really impressed, you know, teammates and supporters and his manager alike. So he's always a player, you know, when you look around the division and you go, oh, Tanganga, I'd love to sign him. You know, you look around and you think, you know, is he one that will, you know, make that step up? You know, you don't know, do you, until you see it. And when they eventually sort of got, because there was some talk of him last January, I think it was, they were after him then, couldn't quite prize him away. And then this summer when they finally got, you know, the green light to get it done, you just thought, that's a solid signing. Again, you know, they'll look at his data, they'll look at his stats, they'll look at his, you know, what he's all about from that point of view. But the eyes as well tell you that, you know, he's a pretty classy operator at this level. Yeah. Probably the one above as well. You know, he's obviously been there with Spurs and everything like that. So we're really impressed with him so far. It looks like decent money well spent, but in fairness, it looks like your boys are not missing him too much. You're absolutely flying. So yeah, it's a shame that he's obviously suspended for this one because it would have been interesting. What sort of reception do you think he would have got?
I think because he never sort of went on a strop and push for a move, right? You know, and Alex Neil made a sort of point at that press conference after Sheffield United to say he wanted to play that game. He never wanted to sit out, and because he got so much money for the club, it was a really good deal. Given they could have lost him for a lot cheaper to a Premier League club. And again, as you mentioned, Caleb Taylor's come in, who is sort of designated to be his replacement and done so well. So it's not like there's been a massive deficiency since. Obviously, Japhet's a fantastic player at this level, but they've replaced him so well. So I think no former player is going to get a good reception at the Den. You know, Jed Wallace was a different situation, but he always got hounded. I think he would have got maybe a mild sort of booing, but nothing. If he'd gone over at the end and clapped, they would have clapped back, I'd say.
Yeah, a polite booing.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's a bit more measured, a bit more restrained than some of the others. Some of the other.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
So, just on the others, I can't imagine many players have covered themselves in glory this season. But are there anyone? You know, obviously, again, Alex Neil pinpointed the like of Harmer and O'Hare on Tuesday. Who has sort of come away with credit this season, and who would you expect to sort of worry Millwall fans on Saturday and be that sort of consistent threat, maybe going forward, or solid at the back?
Yeah, well, every time this question is asked of us, you know, the obvious answer is always Gus Harmer. You know, he's the reigning Championship Player of the Year. I think every club in this division would take him. You know, unbelievable what he can do on his day. But he's had a bit of a struggle of late this season. I say of late, pretty much this entire season. Despite, it's a strange one really, because he could probably have his own goal of the season competition at the minute, because he scored some absolute worldies this season. He scored from the halfway line against Birmingham. Then he's had a couple of absolutely ridiculous strikes since, but he's not had the sort of consistent effect on games that he had last season. Although he had a bit of a pointed message from Chris Wilder last week, basically saying it was aimed at everyone, but I think, you know, the question was framed about Gus. Everyone has to fight to get in this team. You know, there's no automatic, you know, he's the first name on the team sheet, he's definitely going to start. And he responded to that, Gus Harmer. Not that he needed to sort of give a reminder, but it was 2 assists against Ipswich at the weekend that sort of showed, actually, yeah, this kid can play. You know, we all know he can play, but it's always good to get a little reminder of it. But the other one he mentioned, his big pal Callum O'Hare, has been far and away United's player of the season so far. You know, came in last season from Coventry on a free, and he showed what he's about without really sort of backing that up with numbers. You know, people talk about that. You know, it's all right having impact on games, but if you're not getting goals and assists and sort of registering those numbers, you know, you're not really, or are you really doing the best for the team? Does that make sense? Yeah. But this season he's backed that up. You know, his goal record, he's a top scorer now. 8, I think he's got, you know, from that number 10 position or out wide, and his assist record, unbelievable. You'll see on Saturday, if you're watching, the kid just never stops. Watching him is knackering him. Honestly, it tires you out just watching the guy, and it doesn't seem to ever stop. You know, when you know players blow up 60, 70 minutes, you know, it can be 95 minutes and he's still pressing the goalkeeper, and he just never seems to run out of energy. It's quite remarkable, really. Like I said, everyone at United knew what he can do. Everyone knew what sort of player he is. But then this season he's really, I keep saying he stepped out of Gus's shadow a little bit, because last season Gus Harmer was the main man, undoubtedly. And this season, Callum O'Hare, you can almost see has probably gone, you know what, I can do that as well. You know, and whether that's played a part in Gus's not slide, but the way he sort of faded away a little bit. You know, again, they're only humans. We don't know. But he is the main man from a United perspective now. You know, Chris says, again, there's no undroppables, but Callum O'Hare's pretty close to that. Like I said, going further back, Sidney Peck in midfield has been really important. He was injured recently and United really missed him. And then Japhet, I would have said one if he obviously could play. Femi Siriki is a young lad at right back who's still very raw, but on his day is frightening, absolutely frightening. Both ways, actually. On his off day, he's frightening for different reasons. But thankfully, they're a lot rarer these days. He's sort of striking that consistency, you know, for a young lad who's not yet played 50 games. You know, he looks like a player at his best, who's been there, you know, for a long time and played 100, 200 games. So he's been good. Tyler Binden was the second good signing of the summer. Ruben Sellers brought him in and he had a really tough start. Really, really tough start, as did everyone in fairness, but Tyler really struggled, had a long period out of the team. And then he got a chance just before Christmas, I think it was, when they had a few injuries. And in fairness to the kid, he's really, really took it. He impressed with his attitude straight away. He was aggressive. He was front-footed, and since then he's become the first choice essentially, and he's really turned it around. So I think he deserves a lot of credit. So he'll possibly play if he's back from his illness. He's been ill for a while. And Ben Mee's played, who's coming back from a broken hand. It's just, the injury and fitness list is ridiculous. I know every club has their issues. I know that.
Yeah.
It's not uniquely a Sheffield United thing, but Chris Wilder keeps saying 2 or 3 weeks ago they had everyone available, and then within the space of 48 hours they lost 2 players to suspension, a couple to injury. You've got midfielders, no fully fit senior midfielders, so they're all sort of playing 60 minutes and swapping around and getting up to speed in the team. No centre-halves who are fully fit. Mark McGuinness played on Saturday with a dislocated shoulder. Ben Mee played with a broken hand, or just coming back from surgery on a broken hand. Tom Davies played his first start since September, I think it was. It's all through the team. Patrick Bamford suspended for this game, of course, after he got sent off against Ipswich after scoring. It's just bizarre. Honestly, it's crazy. Like I said, you go from having, a fully fit team apart from a couple of, slight knocks, and all of a sudden you're scratching around for a midfielder, and we're looking around thinking, are we going to get called on the bench here? Because there's no one else to really come in. And it's just,
Mill had that too. They were out without 8 central midfielders, all 8 of them. It was so bizarre. Wow. It was every week one would drop off, or suspensions, and then they got to their last 2. Then halfway through, I think it was Bristol City. Casper Denor goes off does his calf. Their only one left is like a 20-year-old who's started 2 games for them ever, signed from Celtic in summer 24. Then he goes off. He does his hamstring. So you have no fit midfielders. They have to start Alfie Doughty and Camille Negley in midfield.
Wow.
Past that now, but like sort of early mid-December.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Like I say, you can just imagine managers just scratching their head and thinking, what chance do we have here? It just seems to, like I say, happen for all clubs in that. You take a step forward, you get 1 back, then you lose 2, and then you just think, when's it going to end? It's crazy. But like I say, hopefully, I know your guys have passed it, and hopefully United are getting to that point now, because when everyone is fit, there's some big decisions there. But like I said, when everyone's fit is a big if at the minute.
Yeah, it's weird. It goes from having to sort of cobble together starting lineups to then controversy online over who gets left out in the end. So I do feel for them. It's never just a normal decision. It's either one end or the other. But speaking of midfield, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about Barry Bannan. It seemed the sort of fate sort of lined up on that signing. Really, he gets announced on a Wednesday, which seems, I think it was a coincidence. And then,
poetic, let's say.
Yeah, and then his first game is against Sheffield United. Am I right in thinking? I might have gotten this completely wrong. He's never beaten Sheffield United. He's never, whenever he's played them, or is that completely made up? Or
he's never beaten them. Sheffield Wednesday.
No, United.
Whether he's never beaten them. He's never beaten them while he's been at Sheffield Wednesday. Yeah, I don't know whether he's done it for Villa or Birmingham or wherever he was before. I can't remember. He's definitely never beaten them in a Sheffield derby. So.
Wow,
it just seems one of those nailed on football things that he'll score this weekend. Beat United in his first game. That just seems to be how football works, doesn't it? But yeah, good signing, good player. Despite this United and Wednesday rivalry nonsense this week, so it's been, Barry Bannan's brilliant or he's absolutely rubbish, all that nonsense. Good, really, really good player, especially at this level. For 36, is he? I think he is.
Yeah.
Only 2 players in the champ this year have made more chances, and that is playing in a pretty poor Wednesday team. Let's be fair. It's a team of kids and pretty poor championship players over there. So to have the record like that and still be creating chances shows what he's about. It's been a strange one looking from obviously up here in Sheffield, but from a distance as well in terms of it being Sheffield Wednesday, the whole thing playing out sort of in the open, him saying goodbye so publicly, and news coming out of him saying bye to his teammates, and then still some Wednesday fans not quite believing it. Barry wouldn't jump ship. He's going to be here till the end, and then sort of the acceptance that actually, yeah, this looks like the end, and he's opened the worst kept secret in football is going to Millwall. It was just absolutely nailed on for so long, and then, like I say, happened this weekend, and just a quirk of the fixture list suggests that his first game's against Sheffield United. So, yeah, when asked about the reception Japhet Tanganga would have got, I don't think there's much doubt about the reception that Barry Bannan will get from that away end. But I think, if you take away the sort of nonsense between the clubs and everything, there's a lot of respect there as well for a player who's been there for 10 years and seen everything there at that football club, really, hasn't he? And he's sort of single-handedly dragged them forward at times. And to still be doing it at his age is pretty remarkable, really. And Chris Wilder's a fan. He puts all that aside, and he's a confirmed admirer of Barry Bannan. I did wonder whether he might have put in a cheeky offer to bring him to the right side of Sheffield, but obviously that didn't materialise. That would have been some meltdown. But yeah, if he plays at the weekend, I don't know whether he will. I don't know what your guys' situation is in there, but United they won't underestimate him, put it that way. They'll know exactly what makes what he's capable of, and despite the fact he's come from Sheffield Wednesday, they'll know that they're up against a pretty good championship operator, despite the fact, as we said, he's never really turned up or done it in a Sheffield derby. It's a strange one, really. But he'll be hoping to put that right. Sure, it won't mean as much, excuse me, in a Millwall shirt as it would in a Sheffield Wednesday shirt, in terms of the magnitude of the game and everything. But if he is celebrating 3 points on Saturday night, in the first game in his new club, I think that'll go down pretty well in the Bannan household.
Yeah, he mentioned. I saw he did an interview on Millwall TV. He mentioned he might need a little bit of support from the fans because of what he expects from the away end on Saturday. So I'll be curious to see how he does from the Millwall perspective, because you mentioned you're not sure how much he'll play. I think just given he's fully fit, he's not one of these players who needs to be adjusted to the Championship like so much of their signings recently, signing from Europe or signing from League One. He's certainly one where they can just plug and play him, right? And he knows exactly what to do at the level. I spoke to Alex Neil about him on Tuesday before it was officially announced. He said it just in terms of raising their ceiling, and you mentioned his chance creation. They've got great creators out wide in Alfie Doughty and Femi Aziz, but they don't have that sort of consistent generation of chances through the centre. So I think whether he plays slightly more further forward or if he plays a bit further back, I think that's where they envision him doing most of his work and sort of threading through balls. I saw a stat on Opta the other day that Mill have 13 through balls on the season, one of the lowest in the Championship. So those three, they've got strikers who can run onto them and score. So being able to have someone who can do that, I think, was a big factor. And it's Barry Bannan. If you can get him, if you can pluck him from Sheffield Wednesday while they're sort of going through what they're going, you might as well, right? He's such a good, he's a leader as well. I think showed real character to stay with them last summer when he had offers on the table. I don't think he'll start. He's available for the game, and he'll be chucked in pretty quickly. But I don't think he'll start. I think it'll be one where maybe if they're pushing for a goal, he'll come off the bench, or I reckon he'll start Billy Mitchell and Casper Denor. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes in training. Alex Neil always talks about it being a meritocracy and whoever impresses him the most. So maybe it'd be fitting for his first game to be against Sheffield United.
It's just football. It's just the way it's set up. It's all set up for a fairy tale for his perspective, isn't it? And that's something else United will have to deal with, isn't it? There'll be a lot of noise around that, and he'll be. Listen, footballers shouldn't need extra motivation. That's a big thing there. I'm not saying he'll be fired up for this, and he wouldn't be fired up if this was against. Any other Middlesbrough or whatever, any other club in the league where there's not as much riding on it. But, perhaps that extra 1% subconsciously might be in his mind. And even if it's not, how often do we see this kind of thing happen where a player goes there, gets a lot of stick and then just quietens it perfectly you know, by scoring or being a big part of it. So it's something United will have to dampen. It's another sort of string, isn't it, of a really, really tough away game. Like I say, even when you guys have not been towards the top of the league, it's never a place you would love to go and play football, despite what I said earlier about how I enjoy going there. On the pitch, it always seems pretty horrible, really, against Millwall, no matter what's happening or how you guys are playing. You know, it's never easy. And I think the whole Barry Bannan sideshow, if you can call it that, you know, just adds another layer of complexity to the game, really, doesn't it? And it's something else that United have got to manage, that emotion of it. You know, take that out of it, really. You know, it doesn't really matter where he's come from, who he is. Just play the game, do your job, and hopefully win the game. Simple game, really, isn't it? Sometimes.
just score 5, put 5 past the goal. Well, before we go, I should put you on the spot here. And
I knew this was coming.
Expected starting 11 and predicted scoreline. What do you think?
Predicted starting 11.
Yeah,
I'm expecting that. Cooper in goal. That's without a doubt. Siriki, Tyler Binden, Ben Mee, Harrison Burrows, Sidney Peck, Oliver Arblaster. I'll go in midfield. Like I said, I'm just trying to think of who's fit at the minute. Andre Brooks, Callum O'Hare, Gus Harmer, and Tyrese Campbell. I think that's 11.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on it. Obviously Patrick Bamford's out suspended, which is a big blow. He's been, talk about signings, he's been ridiculous. They're coming from nowhere. You know, he was out without a club for 6 months or whatever it was since the end of the season, and then to come in, hit the ground running, you know, score so many goals in such a short space of time. He's been remarkable. And then getting sent off was a big blow. Like I say, it's 2 steps forward or 1 step forward, 2 steps back at the minute. Like I say, a lot of the squad sort of picks itself at the minute, apart from a few areas of fitness concerns and stuff. But like I say, it'd be interesting how he plays. It's sort of flitted between 2 up top and sort of a 10 behind the main striker, which is only Callum O'Hare, and that then lets Gus Harmer come in off the left. So I suspect that's what he did against Ipswich last time out. So I suspect that's what he might do again at Millwall. And like I say, it's a big day for those 2 in midfield as well, because it'll get put on them, you know, in terms of Millwall's threats. And again, that's no disrespect whatsoever, but they'll be tested, and they're going to have to stand up to that, because it'll be 2 young lads potentially in the middle of the park. Like I said, they'll be, I'm sure, relishing that challenge, which is what it will be. You know, it always is going there. Like I said, looking forward to coming down and seeing the famous old football ground once again. Harchester United's home ground, of course. You're probably too young to remember Dream Team.
I'm vaguely aware of the show. Vaguely. I have a vague sense.
I feel old now.
I do have to ask you predicted scoreline. What do you think?
Oh yeah, I was trying to get away with that. I was hoping you'd forget. I'd snatch your hand off for a point now. Always would do, I think, going to Millwall. You know, if we can get away with the sort of 1-1 draw, you know, I'd take that now. With the way you say your guys are flying, the form you're in, you know, you're looking only up the table. I'd take that. So I think I'll go with a 1-1, an entertaining 1-1 draw. Hopefully without Barry Bannan scoring for Wednesday. For Wednesday there. That's just sort of rolls off the tongue. Barry Bannan scoring for Millwall, which will sound strange saying that. It'll take some getting to not seeing him in a Wednesday shirt.
It was weird even seeing him in the announcement. He looked almost a bit sad, really.
I wonder how that would go down. Like, Millwall fans. I'm sure if he scores, you know, they'll forget about all that pretty quickly.
Someone said it looked a bit like a hostage video. I'm sure he's delighted to be here, working with another spot. It feels only fair that I'll do the same.
I was going to say, you're not getting away with it if you put me on the spot.
No, I wouldn't do that to you. I'll do the same. It's a bit tricky as well, because you mentioned it could be a 2 up front as well. So it will really depend. I think you'll go for 1 up front. I think you'll go Crocombe in goal, Crammer at right back, who has been unbelievable this season. He's definitely destined for the Prem. Cooper and Taylor, both been excellent. Taylor, again, excellent after stepping up from League One. Alfie Doughty from at left back, signing of the summer.
Yeah, great player. Always liked him.
Great deal they got from him as well. Unbelievable. That was a signing for me where it felt like their intent was, we're really pushing for this. That was unreal. Midfield, I'll go for Billy Mitchell and Casper Denor. That's the sort of area I'm most uncertain about. Camille Negley at number 10. He's really stepped up in the past couple of weeks. He was at a record signing last Jan. Had a bit of a shaky start, but has been excellent since. Then on the right, Femi, again, another who's bound for the Prem. Excellent. Been so sort of lethal. Left, probably Tieno Ballo if he's recovered from illness. And then up front, I'll go Ivanovic. And scoreline prediction, 2-1, Barry Bannan, 90th minute screamer to win it. Celebration for the away fans as well. There's a little...
quite right. And obviously it'll be Jake Cooper scoring the first because he always scores. His record against United is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I've never actually...
Every other
half his senior goals or something have come against United. It's ridiculous. Like that. It's bizarre.
Yeah. I think he's the one, if you had to ask the sort of world at large, what do you know Millwall for? I think he's often one, they just, because he's the man is humongous. He's kind of even bigger.
Yeah.
He came up after a game a couple of months ago and his biceps are like the size of my legs. I remember when Leeds came here and under Fark a year and a half ago in November 2024, they kept raining crosses in, and every time Coop would rise up and thump it away almost dismissively. And he was asked, he called him Jake the Giant after. He was like, what are we thinking putting that in for him?
You have to wonder sometimes, don't you?
Yeah. Well, they try to stop him now by hanging off him. They've got two guys sort of like holding onto his arms at set pieces, so he can't break through and score. But we'll see. I remember
him scoring at Bramall Lane. Obviously, you'd imagine towering headers because he's about 7'4". But he scored one at Bramall Lane, which was outside the area, I think, like left foot volley, which was late on, I think. I can't remember what season that was. Yeah. They just smashed one in from absolute miles out. And you think, this is just getting ridiculous now. You stop him scoring from set pieces, fair enough. And then he pops up outside the box and smashes one in that left foot. And you just think, what can you do? He's just got, for some reason, he's got some sort of divine thing about scoring against Sheffield United. And I think, because was he injured for the first game this season? Or something about him might be injured. I remember United fans sharing that and going, thank God, because basically that's their biggest goal threat against us has been ruled out. And obviously, as it passed, he ended up winning anyway. But it's like I say, football has these little quirks, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't remember him being out. But yeah, he's
maybe it was like, he might be out or something. But I remember someone sharing it and going, thank God for that.
He's almost like the Antichrist at Bramall Lane, is he?
Honestly, it's bizarre. So get your money on that. Cooper and Bannan double.
Well, if anyone makes money off that, they have to send me a slice. But thank you very much for your time, Danny. That's been excellent. Really appreciate you hopping on.
No problem, mate. Anytime.
Yeah, we'll have to see how it all goes on Saturday. Maybe my prediction will ring true. I hope so. And thanks to all our listeners. Appreciate you listening in, and we'll see what happens on Saturday.